up, everybody? Welcome into yet another edition of the Baseline Jumper podcast. My name is Jason Goldstein, and I'm joined, as always, by Ben McDonald, who happens to be in one of Andy Dwyer's favorite places, Indianapolis. Ben, what's up, buddy?
Hello there, my friend. A little bit of business takes me to Indianapolis, and now I get to enjoy on this show a little bit of pleasure on the side, getting to do this podcast with you, my friend.
Absolutely. Wait, are you a Parks and Rec guy?
I am. I actually really like the show. I
Oh,
didn't
okay.
watch
I
it
wasn't sure if you
originally,
were going to get the reference. All
but
right.
I'm actually I really like it. I've watched it on Netflix. Um, my wife Flo's best friend. It's like one of her favorite shows. So shout out to Carmela.
Yes, hello, Carmelo. Thank you for being a faithful Baseline Jumper supporter. Anyway, we're in the dog days of summer now. The calendar has officially flipped to August. And again, there's not too much to talk about, but I know there's a common phrase, Ben, Christmas in July. How about Christmas in August? Because the NBA Christmas Day schedule came out, which means the full slate of regular season games is probably not far behind. But on Christmas Day, we don't know the order yet, but it's reportedly going to be Bucks Sixers, Celtics Raptors, Nuggets Pelicans, Lakers Clippers, and of course the mainstay Rockets Warriors. So Benjamin, let me ask your initial thoughts when you saw the schedule when it came out.
Well, I wonder if people could hear the like industrial AC that came on in my hotel room right as you started talking. But in either case, I am really excited about this Christmas Day slate. This is actually one of my favorite Christmas Day slates we've seen in a long time. There's a couple here that maybe don't belong. Celtics Raptors, that one feels a little crummy without Kawhi in there. But the rest of these are really pretty spectacular. And I mean, the one here that could be a little bit of a dark horse, I think, Jason, is the Nuggets Pelicans, which, if things break a certain way, could be a really, really fun game because those are two really talented teams that seem like they're sort of some of the sleeping giants, if such things even exist in today's NBA where players move so much. Those two teams kind of represent it. But I mean, obviously, I think you have the best two teams in the East and the best two teams in the West by many people's accounts in Clippers Lakers and Bucks 76ers. And then, of course, as you mentioned, Rockets Warriors is going to be a heck of a game as well. Unfortunately, it probably won't have Klay Thompson. It would be really surprising if he was back by then. So it's likely going to be Klay Thompson less. But those are really, I mean, about as good as you can get. I'm really excited to see how the Bucks rebound without having Brogdon there. I think that's going to be really interesting. I think the 76ers have a chance to be the best defense in the NBA next year. I know we talked about that a little in the past, so that'll be a great matchup to kind of maybe give us an idea of how those teams are going to match up as the playoffs come. And then same thing with obviously Lakers Clippers, who many people believe to be there. But Jason, I think in some ways the one that might be the most interesting still might be Rockets Warriors because I'm going to be really interested to watch this Warriors team in the first few months of the season. Obviously, they just signed Draymond Green, which is something we have to talk about a little bit as well. But that signing really signals their intentions, I think. And that is that obviously they want to continue to compete, Jason.
Yeah, let's talk about it right now. So while we're covering Rockets Warriors Christmas Day matchup, I think it was a good deal for both parties. It definitely weakens the 2020 NBA free agent class that Draymond Green was initially
Yeah.
supposed to be at the top of, but ends up getting an extension. I thought he would end up leaving as a free agent because of all the money they're giving to Steph and Clay and now D'Angelo Russell. But it looks like Draymond gets a chance to play out the back end of his prime in Golden State. It's not terrible money.
Mhm.
You know, you're paying a fourth scoring option, $25 million, but he does do a lot for the team. He rebounds, he's one of the best passing big men in the game. He blocks shots, he brings energy. So I think that Draymond Green will have a lot to say to the Warrior naysayers, particularly in the early months of the season without Klay Thompson, because no one's picking the Warriors to do much of anything. And then you look at the Rockets, and they're trying to integrate Westbrook in with Harden. And I've been saying that they don't really have the best depth, so we'll see where both those teams are in the standings come Christmas Day. But it'll be a good litmus test because I want to see these teams play in the playoffs yet again against each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to also just touch on something you mentioned, which is the 2020 free agent class, which is going to be a bit underwhelming. Of the unrestricted free agents, you could make the case that Kyle Lowry at currently at 34 years old, is the best free agent available next year, which is not a great sign. Paul Millsap, who is 35 right now, is up there as one of the top guys. Marc Gasol, who's 35. I mean, there's just not a great list of guys. Danilo Gallinari. Once you get past the unrestricted, you go into like restricted guys. There's still not a ton there, really. You have Bogdan Bogdanovic, the guy from the Kings, is probably one of the better guys, and then Brandon Ingram and Jaylen Brown, Buddy Hield. So there are a few in the restricted market, but most people assume that the teams are going to bring those guys back. So it doesn't seem like those are great ones. And then there's a bunch of good players who are technically could be available via player option, but most of them are expected to exert that player option. Gordon Hayward. If DeMar DeRozan opts out, I think he's the best free agent of next year, Jason. But you really said it. It weakens that class, the Draymond thing. I just had to go to that aside because it is almost an historically bad free agent class, which I think is which is actually pretty interesting. But you're absolutely right. This Warriors team could be it could be a really good team. It could be a mediocre team. It could be a great team. And I feel like we really don't know. It's such an unpredictable team. D'Angelo Russell, as you've talked about all season, is this guy who showed tremendous potential, and now we see him on this Warriors team. I mean, what do you make of him? Do you think he's going to perform well without Thompson in there, where he gets that opportunity?
I mean, D'Angelo's not really going to have much of a choice. He's going to be there with Steph. I think that he's going to be better with the presence of Steph because, with Curry spacing the floor, D'Angelo get a chance to drive to the basket, do his thing, get his floaters up, and he's improved as a three-point shooter as well. So I think that'll be a good move for the Warriors to get him going early. And then you look ahead to these other two potential conference final matchups with Lakers Clippers, and I love that they're doing that because that means only four teams will have to really travel on Christmas Day. Whether or not the Clippers and Lakers are home, at least they're both in LA. You have LeBron and AD going up against Kawhi and Paul George, and then Bucks Sixers head and shoulders above the rest of the class in the Eastern Conference. That is definitely a potential Eastern Conference Finals preview. You have anything on those two series?
Well, I was going to ask you. I mean, for me, Rockets Warriors might be the most interesting. I think uh, Lakers Clippers is up there, but I might go Rockets Warriors just because I want to see all the marquee games the Warriors play, as I mentioned. Which one for you, Jason, is the most interesting? Is it? I know you mentioned kind of Bucks Sixers. Is that the one that you would pick?
No, because I think it's chalk. They're easily the two best teams in the East. I'm going with Nuggets Pelicans because you mentioned at the top of the
Oh,
show dark horse candidates in the West. The Nuggets are there. They were the two seed. They had a deep playoff run. If they didn't catch a really hot Portland team, they would have been in the conference finals. So the Nuggets are there, but it's the Pelicans who I'm very high on after the offseason that they've had. I'm projecting them to make the playoffs. You bring in Zion with the top pick, Lonzo Ball, Ingram, Josh Hart. You get Derek Favors and JJ Redick as free agents, and then you have Drew Holiday still there. So they have a lot of nice pieces. I think it's going to be a very intriguing game. And before we move on, I think the reason why, I mean, it's Celtics Raptors. The Raptors are the defending NBA champs. They will deserve their fair share of primetime games, especially on Christmas Day. I think the Nets, and I know I'm a biased, crazy Homer boy Nets fan, but I think the NBA made the right decision leaving Brooklyn out of the Christmas Day schedule, even with Kyrie Irving there. I think if Durant were healthy, the Nets would be a shoe-in to play on Christmas Day. I think they'll get one in 2020, depending on Durant's health, if and when he comes back. But I'm glad the Nets aren't playing on Christmas. They get to be at home with their families, opening up presents. I think the NBA did get this schedule right. I just don't think there's a lot of teams with the potential to go for it, but these are 10 teams that could potentially win it all.
let
You know,
me.
there's
I was gonna say, let me make the case for why the Nets should be in here. I'm gonna make the case against that, which is I would have loved to have seen Celtics Nets with Kyrie and the Celtics on Christmas Day. That would have been a nice little present under my tree, Jason, to get to watch how Celtics fans respond to Kyrie Irving as he plays against the Boston Celtics, particularly if they could have made this the first time they play. That would have been something else, especially given that there has been some acrimony between these two teams, obviously with the trade between Billy King and the Celtics, and now the fact that the Nets end up sweeping Kyrie Irving out from the Celtics, who was the one guy who Danny Ainge decided to trade for, really. I mean, I think that would be a great matchup with or without KD.
I think it is, but it's reportedly going to happen on Thanksgiving Eve. So it'll still be kind of marquee. Thanksgiving Eve's a big night. A lot of people are home for Thanksgiving. So I think that'll be, a nationally televised game. I see your point, but you couldn't leave out the Raptors from this slate because they are the defending NBA champions. Even without Kawhi, they're probably the worst team on this list of 10 here. And really the only omission for me that I would have argued for is probably Portland, coming off the Western Conference Finals. I don't think there are any other East teams that deserved it. And the West is just too good, too top heavy. I mean, you could have really squeezed in a sixth game, like Blazers Jazz, but with the way these games are lined up from noon all the way up to 1 o'clock in the morning Eastern time, there's really nowhere to fit in a sixth game. So I do think the NBA got it right. I really don't have any issues with it.
Yeah, for the most part, neither do I. Again, the Raptors, they are the champs. You're right; they deserve the respect. I'm not sure they're going to be a very interesting team this year. I think they'll be decent, but not that much fun to watch. I do want to ask you, can you make your case for the Nuggets in the Western Conference this year? I haven't heard many people make it. I mean, do you feel like there's a case to be made for them? You had mentioned you think they're a dark horse.
Yeah, because of how good Joker is. I mean, he's the superstar now. In a superstar driven league, he is Denver's homegrown superstar. And if Jamal Murray continues to improve, Gary Harris, you still have solid veterans there with Paul Millsap. You have a deep bench. You have an unheralded rookie in Michael Porter Jr. We don't know what we're going to get out of him. You have another project there in Bol Bol. So the Nuggets are loaded, and I think they're probably the best homegrown team, I would say, because the Warriors have been winning for years. Portland has two homegrown stars in McCollum and Lillard, but the Nuggets are really the next team on the come up. You saw it where they got the 2 seed. So I see no issue with them competing for the top of the Western Conference crown. I mean, obviously injuries can happen, but if healthy, the Nuggets are as good as any team in the West.
Do you think that the fall of the Warriors to some degree helps or hurts a team like the Nuggets who had a guy like Jokic? Because I've heard the case made that it's good for teams that have traditional big men for the Warriors to go down, but I wonder for teams like the Nuggets who had someone who kind of broke the Warriors system to begin with in the sense that Draymond Green, there weren't many guys in the league he had trouble guarding. Marc Gasol was a good example. Um, Jokic was another. Embiid gave him some trouble. Um, I'm sure I'm missing a couple guys, but those were some of the guys who he seemed to really struggle guarding, and it made it harder for them to play that death lineup. Do you think that that's good or bad for them with the Warriors kind of maybe moving down the pecking order a bit?
I mean, I don't think it matters if I'm being
Mm,
completely honest with you. The Nuggets are tailor made to play against anybody. I think you saw a lot of teams with the copycat approach to what Golden State's doing, spread the floor, shoot a million threes a game. But the Nuggets could hit you from all sides. They have a post game, they have an outside game, they have a mid range game. They have a lot of the right pieces that mesh well together, which is why I think they have potential to be very, very good again. So I think if they're healthy and they're clicking, the sky's the limit.
yeah, I'm curious to see how Jokic plays if he sees a few more of the traditional bigs. I wonder if it'll actually hurt him if he'll struggle a little bit against more traditional bigs. But um, remains to be seen. That said, something that we had been kind of talking about for a while, Jason, and that we had been holding on to for a bit was the all-time starting five. So I have a friend of mine in Pittsburgh whose name's Keith. We had this discussion of sort of what is the all-time starting five. And for those of you who are NBA 2K fans, I haven't played the game in quite a while, but they give you the option to make all-time teams and you can play 5-on-5 and so on. And nowadays I think people think about this more, and it got me and Jason to thinking who we would put on our all-time starting fives. Uh, and I have to admit, Jason, when we put this together, we didn't put it in the ground rule. One important thing that I think we have to specify is this going to be old school basketball or is this going to have 3-point line? I mean, are we saying this will be modern basketball with 3-point line and the lane drawn up the way it is today?